Microsoft has recently been streaming quite a lot of programming in VSCode, and if you are watching them, then you have noticed two recurring themes. They use AI a lot, and they use the mouse a lot. So let's one-up Microsoft by writing a small program in Microsoft C# using Microsoft Visual Studio Code on Microsoft Windows, but with no AI and no mouse. For reference, here are my settings. They are completely empty, meaning you could follow along with all of my keybinds on a brand new installation of Visual Studio Code. I do have a couple of extensions. You can find them in the description and pinned comment. Alright, so Control W to close this, Control Shift P for the command palette. Let's use .NET new project. I'm going to make a console app. I'm going to call it dated file maker. In the default directory with a solution, let's create a project. Control Shift E for Explorer to focus on the Explorer. Arrow keys to go up, arrow keys to go down. Once again, arrow keys to go up in the file. Control Shift K to delete this unnecessary comment. Control backtick to open the terminal. Let's cd into the directory and let's do .NET run just to make sure everything works. And indeed it does. Nice. So let's do Control backtick once again to close the terminal. Alright, so I'm going to go between the two double quotes, Alt Shift and arrow keys to incrementally select. And let's change this to desired file name. We want to ask the user what the file should be called. And I'm going to store the input in a string variable. Let's call it file name, console.readLine. Here I'm using the fuzzy search from Visual Studio Code and tab to autocomplete. Now we already get a warning. We can hover over it and do Control K, Control I, Control K, Control I for information. And we get the information that the return value of readline may be null. So I'm going to ignore that just because this is proof of concept code. You maybe shouldn't. In any case, let's now read from the user a datetime. So first let's ask console.WriteLine desired file creation date. Use the end key to get to the end of the line to add the semicolon. Now, we need to deal with the user possibly entering an invalid date. So I'm going to store the input from the user once again in a variable, in a datetime variable. I'll call it user datetime. And let's just initialize it for a sec with datetime.now. So we'd like to do datetime.tryParse with user datetime and, sorry, that's going to be the output, and the input will be console.readLine, whatever the user inputs. Now, if we go back to tryParse and we do Control K, Control I for some information, we see that tryParse converts the string into a datetime and returns value telling us whether the conversion has succeeded. So if the conversion didn't succeed, I'd like to ask the user to try again. So I'm going to use the incremental selection with Alt Shift and right arrow once again to select the entire line. I'll use an opening parenthesis to surround this, use Control Shift backslash to jump to the opening parenthesis from the closing parenthesis, add the while keyword because I'd like to loop. Once again, Control Shift backslash to get to the end, curly brace, console.WriteLine, not a valid date. End key and semicolon to end it. Now there's a tiny bug here. I'm going to use Control Shift backslash here once again to jump all the way to the front of the parenthesis. We need to check for this being false, because it's false if the tryParse did not succeed. Okay, let's go to the end. Now we are ready to do file.create, create the file with the file name. Since I'm not doing anything with the file, I can close it immediately. And finally, let's set the creation time of file name to user datetime. Very nice. Let's open the terminal once again, .NET run, hello.txt, let's do 10.10.1990 for an example, and it works nicely. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.